Before we get started with today's episode, I just want to address the elephant in the room. There's been a lot of rumor and innuendo about Bruce Prichard. Just to clear it up, Bruce Prichard is still with WWE. Bruce Prichard is not quitting his podcast. But if you're a longtime listener to this show, that you know that there have been health events in the Prichard family and household. And right now, Bruce is going to take a little bit of a leave of absence from WWE, and he's going to be away taking care of what's really important. But in the meantime, man, the show must go on here at Something to Wrestle. So we've got, I don't want to say a guest host, maybe an interim host. Yeah, maybe that's the right word. I think in the UFC, if the champion goes down for a bit, well, the show must go on. We'll crown a new interim champion. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Something to Wrestle with John Layfield. John, good morning, man. How are you?
I'm so happy you called Bruce an elephant. I've been calling him an elephant for a long time.
Our topic today is Bruce Prichard. I figured, hey, what do Bruce Prichard podcast fans want to hear? Bruce Prichard stories. Who better to tell us some Bruce Prichard stories than his old pal JBL? John, you referred to him as an elephant, but when I first met you, you started telling me how much Bruce loves donkeys. What's going on with that? What is that about?
You know, we saw a donkey one day, and the whole thing came about. It's been a joke for almost 20 years now that Bruce likes donkeys. I'd love to tell you there's something like Juarez story where Bruce went down to Juarez or something, got caught with a donkey, and there's a high possibility that happened. But there's really not much behind the donkey story. I'd love to say that there is. But by the way, how does this happen that you got Bruce Prichard, who's like the biggest podcast host next to Joe Rogan, and I'm out clotheslining guys on independence, and when he needs somebody to fill in for him, he calls me? He's running a multi-billion-dollar company in WWE along with Triple H and Nick Khan, and I get called from the independents to come in, filling in for my donkey-loving elephant buddy.
I think you might even call this a developmental. That's what we're.
That's right. I'm trying to get a WWEID badge right now for Bruce Prichard show.
You're working. You've done the wrestling business backwards. When I first met David Flair, he told me the same thing. He said, I did wrestling backwards. I started on live TV, and then I worked my way to the independents. It's really going according to plan.
As long as you got a progression, it doesn't matter.
That's right. And hey, we're going to progress today because we're telling some Bruce Prichard stories. And I just want to sort of start at the beginning, John. How did you originally meet Bruce? Would that have been in the WWE when you came in?
Yeah, it sure was. I was in Europe. I'd worked for Otto Vance and Peter William over there for a couple years in Europe for 2 year entire tours over there. And my last tour I was there, we were in Bremen, Germany, which is freezing cold up there. And, I had a 16 by 6 foot trailer, had no bathroom in it, had no running water, but I was having a blast. It was a wonderful tour over there. Great group of guys with Fit Finley, Tony St. Clair, Franz Schumann, Luke Poirier, Gustl Smeasel, Uffa Herman. You had some incredible guys over there, wonderful groups. Danny Boy Collins. And toward the end of the second tour, I didn't have any insulation on my trailer or anything. I was freezing up in northern Germany, living in a parking lot right outside of the arena. And somebody came to me and told me, said, you're going to get a phone call at a payphone downtown tomorrow at 3:00. And I think the boys love to rib guys over there. And I'm thinking this has got to be a rib. And to this day, I can't remember who told me. We think it was Owen. I asked Bruce about it. We think it was Owen Hart. Jim Neidhart was over there. We think Owen was the one that told me. But they had, for some reason, WWE had a number for that payphone in the middle of Bremen, Germany. And so it's freezing, pouring rain, which had nothing to do with the story, but it did have something to do with the effect. So I get my umbrella, at 2:30 in the afternoon, I walk down to the payphone, and I'm standing there with this umbrella thinking I'm the biggest dork in the world. But I want to see what the rib is because I know it's going to be entertaining. Whatever it is, it's going to be entertaining. And sure enough, exactly at 3:00, the phone rang. And I picked it up, and it said, that's Bruce Prichard from the WWE. And I was like, no, it's not. This can't possibly be anybody from WWE. And I said, well, this is John. He goes, yeah, we found your tape. Me and Pat found it. We've been watching it. We'd like for you to come in for a tryout. And I said, okay, when? He goes, well, your tour's up so-and-so, and I'm still not really buying any of it. This just seems – I keep looking around without trying to be obvious to see who's watching me, and I can't see anybody because the parking lot is completely clean. There's no trees around. And finally, I realized that it was indeed Bruce Prichard with Pat Patterson, and that's how I got my call the first time I met Bruce.
So if memory serves, that would have been sometime in late 95. Does that sound right?
Yeah, December of 95.
And so you wind up doing a dark match in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Does that sound right? You and Savio Vega, is that your first one?
That is 100% correct, yes.
So that was a Superstars taping, and it went down just a few days before Christmas, December 19th. Was that a Christmas dream come true for you to finally be in a WWE ring?
100%. Yeah, I had been over there, and I think it was DDP that got hold of me. I think it was. They got hold of me and said, hey, WCW wants you to come in, and they were going to give me like $75,000, something like that. And then the second year, like 115 or 120. I can't remember what it was, maybe 100. Anyway, he had a progression up, 2-year contract, and they wanted me to come to WCW. So I went going to WWE first, unbeknownst to them. And if WWE had agreed to sign me, I was going to stay with WWE because I just thought that was the better deal. So I was going literally the next day to go down to WCW. So I came into Philadelphia where a pay-per-view was. And it was snowing like crazy. I'm sitting in the dressing room because I knew Glenn Jacobs, Kane, who was Isaac Yankum then. So I'm sitting with Glenn talking to him because we were tag team partners over in Europe together. The Zwei Meter und Zwei tag team over there for Otto Vance. And Tony Gurria comes in. He goes, I need to talk to you. And I said, sure. So I thought this is my chance to meet Vince or whatever else. And he threw me out of the building. And he said, are you supposed to be here? I said, well, they told me to come through. I said, I flew in from Europe. And he goes, well, I'm sorry you can't be here. I said, fine. I wasn't going to argue. I got in my car, went to the hotel, but it was snowing and I couldn't get a flight out or I would have never come back the next day. And so I come back the next day and went to Bethlehem and they had a statewide warning. Everything was shut down. He had all the people on one side of the ring, about 250, 300 people at the entire arena. That's all there was that day. And right before the match, they said, you're working with Savio Vega, and Dutch was sitting there. Dutch Mantell said, hey, can I go out with him? And they said, sure. Dutch had just lost the Harris boys because they had choked out Shawn Michaels at Madison Square Garden. And so Dutch didn't have anybody. So I'll go out with Dutch with Savio, go out there, come back. Nobody said a word. I go to get dressed, and Gerald Briscoe comes in and sees me when I'm showering with J.J. Dillon, not showering with J.J. Dillon. That's how I got a job. I showered with J.J. Dillon. You got breaking news here. J.J. and I go way back. And Briscoe comes in and says, hey, we want to sign you. And Briscoe had talked to Vince. Vince didn't see the match. He says, hey, we got to sign this kid. And Vince said, you think so? He said, yeah. He's going down to WCW tomorrow. He said, if Dusty gets hold of him, we won't see him again. That's what Briscoe's told Vince. And so I'm sitting there with Jerry. First time I ever met Jerry. And he goes, hey, we want to sign you. And I said, well, I want to sign. He goes, how do we know you're going to sign? I said, how do I know you're going to give me a contract? And he says, you have my word. And he stuck out his hand. And I'm sitting there thinking, I've got to make a lifetime decision here for a guy I just met 10 seconds ago while I'm naked showering with J.J. Dillon. And so I shook his hand. He goes, well, go call Dusty. I said, okay. Jerry followed me to the payphone, and it had one of those doors that closed. And Jerry came in the phone booth with me to make sure I called Dusty to tell him that I wasn't coming.